The Wade family left the city on Sunday. They wanted some peace and quiet. The forest was like something out of a fairy tale. Soft moss underfoot, sunlight filtering through the leaves, the air filled with the sense of childhood. Tom and Melanie spread a blanket at the edge of the lawn, next to a stream. Leah, their 5-year-old daughter, played in the tall grass nearby, watched over by Jess, their sheepdog. The dog never left the girl's side. Jess was more than just a pet. She had grown up with Leah, slept by her bed, and always stood between her and danger, even if it was just the vacuum cleaner. At first, everything seemed perfect. Melanie was grilling sausages. Tom was reading a map of local trails. Leah's laughter carried through the wind. But then, it became too quiet. At first, it was just a couple of minutes. No one thought anything of it. But when Leah didn't respond to their calls, Tom got up. He stepped behind the trees where the girl had last been seen between the trunks. Nothing. No Leah. No Jess. Leah! His voice echoed into the thicket. There was no answer. Tom went deeper. On the damp ground were traces of small boots and paws. Further on was a large, blurred footprint. Something heavy had walked here, crushing the moss and pushing aside the leaves. It wasn't a deer. Nor was it a wild boar. It was something bigger. When he saw a torn ribbon of Leah's hair lying on a bush, his heart seemed to stop. They hadn't just left. They had disappeared. Tom rushed through the thicket, tearing branches apart with his hands, feeling neither scratches nor fatigue. His heart was beating like a drum in his chest. Somewhere ahead, among the tall trees and damp bushes, was his daughter. And Jess, his sheepdog, his faithful protector. There were footprints on the mossy ground, small prints of children's shoes, and next to them, paw prints. Jess was walking next to the girl. But the deeper he went into the forest, the deeper his fear grew. Because soon other footprints appeared alongside them. Large ones, blurred ones, not dog ones, not human ones. He stopped, leaned against a tree trunk, trying to hear something through the silence of the forest. Somewhere in the distance, a bird cried out, and then everything fell silent. No child's voice, no Jess's barking, only the ominous silence of the jungle. Tom walked on until he reached a ravine. At the bottom, in the shade of roots and boulders, was a clearing, and in the center of it was Jess. She stood with her paws spread wide in front of a little girl who was clinging to her. Directly opposite them, a little further away, at the edge of the forest, was a silhouette. A bear. Huge, dark, almost blending in with the trees. It hesitated, taking a step forward and then retreating, while Jess growled, not taking her eyes off it. Little Leah sat behind her, as if knowing that no one but Jess could save her now. Tom froze, not knowing whether to take a step or shout. Any movement could change everything, one way or the other. The father's heart sank when he finally saw where they were. His little girl was standing below, in the middle of a natural trap, a small hollow hidden from view among thick bushes. And nearby, tensing every muscle, stood the sheepdog. Her fur was ruffled, her ears pressed back, her eyes fixed on the approaching beast. The bear was huge. Water was still dripping from its paws. Apparently, it had just come out of a river or swamp. It walked slowly and confidently, as if it felt that this forest belonged to it. But the dog did not retreat. It growled, not loudly, but hollowly and menacingly, and stood between the bear and the child, shielding the little girl with its body. The man wanted to scream, to run, but he realized that any movement could provoke an attack. He stayed where he was, barely breathing, watching as his dog, his old, loyal Leia, held back the onslaught of the wild beast. The bear came closer. He stood on his hind legs, towering over them. At that moment, Leia barked loudly. Once, twice, 3 times, gutturally and bravely, without looking away. The girl behind her pressed herself against the slope, covering her face with her hands. Everything froze. The air, the birds, even the leaves did not move. It seemed that nature itself held its breath. And suddenly, after hesitating, The bear lowered himself back onto all four paws. He grunted as if he had lost interest and slowly turned away, disappearing into the greenery of the forest. Unable to contain himself, the father rushed down the slope. He ran up to his daughter, fell to his knees, and hugged her, unable to utter a word. Leia approached them from behind, breathing heavily, her eyes tired but full of pride. She had done her duty. This scene was etched in the man's memory forever. He knew that at that moment, when everything was on the line, only the dog stood between his daughter and death, and she chose to fight. As the tension in the forest reached its peak, the German shepherd stood unwavering between the little girl and the looming bear. The air was thick with anticipation. Every breath seemed louder, every movement sharper. The bear growled low, eyes locked on the protective dog, sizing up its opponent. But the shepherd, trained by years of loyalty and courage, did not back down. It barked fiercely, muscles tense, fur standing on end, ready to defend its family at all costs. The little girl clung tightly to her father's leg, eyes wide but trusting the brave dog beside her. Suddenly, with a final growl, the bear paused, then slowly turned away, melting back into the dense forest. The shepherd's stance relaxed, but its eyes never left the shadows, vigilant and ready. The father rushed to his daughter's side, lifting her into a warm embrace, whispering words of comfort. The shepherd wagged its tail, proud and calm, having done its duty. In the quiet aftermath, the forest seemed to breathe again, as if grateful for the courage that saved a precious life that day. After the bear slowly retreated into the dark thicket of the forest, an unusual silence fell, filled only with the rustling of leaves and the distant cries of night birds. The father hugged his little daughter, who was still clutching the hand of her faithful sheepdog. The girl looked at her protector with gratitude and admiration, her eyes shining with trust and love. The sheepdog, tired but proud, raised her head and carefully surveyed the area around her. Her fur was slightly ruffled, but she was unharmed. It was clear that she was ready to defend the family again if necessary. The father smiled quietly, deeply aware that this dog was much more than just an animal. She had become a true guardian of their safety and a symbol of hope in this wild forest. The forest seemed to recognize this too. Nocturnal animals began to appear around them. Owls, small animals, and even a couple of fireflies that seemed to illuminate their small camp. In this corner of nature, the family felt safe, as if nature itself was protecting them. The father gently stroked the sheepdog behind the ear, whispering words of gratitude and support. The girl, snuggling up to the dog, whispered softly, "Thank you for protecting us." These words were full of sincerity and tenderness. That night, under the cover of the starry sky, the family held each other tightly, feeling that together they could overcome any difficulties. The sheepdog, as always, lay nearby, ready to defend them at any moment. Night finally gave way to dawn. The first rays of sunlight penetrated through the treetops, enveloping the forest in a golden glow. The air was filled with freshness and the sounds of nature awakening. Birds began to sing, and a light mist dissipated, as if carrying away the anxiety of the night. The man sat by the fire, wrapping his daughter in a warm blanket. She slept peacefully, her head resting on the dog's side. The sheepdog did not move, only occasionally opening its eyes and listening. Its work was not yet done. It continued to guard the peace of its little mistress. The bear was no longer visible. Perhaps it had long since disappeared into the thicket. But there was no fear in the man's eyes, only gratitude. He slowly approached the dog, crouched down beside her, and gently placed his hand on her forehead. "Thank you," he whispered, as if afraid of disturbing the peace. The dog did not react. It just continued to lie there, as if it knew that words were unnecessary. A couple of hours later, they were about to leave. But that day changed everything. The man realized that their sheepdog was not just a pet. It was a guardian, a protector, a living creature ready to give everything for its own. As the family walked along the forest path back to the car, the sheepdog walked alongside the girl. She occasionally turned her head to make sure everything was calm. The sun shone on their backs, and long shadows stretched from their silhouettes. A family made stronger by love, trust, and one brave dog.